All right, so hey, as Shane likes to say, list season, we need content to talk about, and there's just been so many damn transfers the last couple of weeks. I thought it would be fun to rank transfers in terms of their impact on the field in the SEC next season. Now, while coming up with this list, I'm assuming that all these guys are going to be eligible next season. That is not official with some guys, and I'm thinking here as I go down the list here, Henry Toato. Yes, the NCAA has passed the one-time waiver to where you're eligible immediately, but the SEC still got to pass the same deal. So technically, he is not eligible to play for Alabama, but that is going to be decided here in, I believe, in June during the SEC league meetings is when they'll kind of make a determination on that. And a lot of people, most people that I talk to, expect that to pass. So I'm not expecting any hurdles to be in Henry To'oto'o's way, but I just wanted to make that note. He's still got to be officially ruled eligible if he hopes to go from one SEC team to another. And of course, this is I'm talking just underclassmen because there's a couple other guys on this list that are graduates that are eligible immediately regardless. So hey, this was a tough list to whittle down here. I've got about 30 names to pick from, so I just went with the top 15 here. And we'll start at the bottom here. Number 15 on my list, former Auburn defensive lineman Daquan Newkirk to Florida. The Gators are going to need a presence there in the middle of that defense. I think, I've been saying it all offseason. I think the Florida defense is going to be a lot better than it was last season. They've also added the defensive lineman from Penn State. But I'm going with Newkirk here. But I think he'll make a little bit of a bigger impact here. He's already played. He's logged 30 career games here during his Auburn career. So he's got tons of experience in the SEC. Hell, he's even played in Gainesville. And Dan Mullen and company were already singing this guy's praises when he showed up. The other guy's name is Antonio Shelton, I believe, from Penn State. A little bit less productive. And, of course, coming to the Big Ten, to the SEC, there's a difference there. So those were kind of the determining factors for me why I put Newkirk over Shelton on that one. All right, number 14 on my list, former West Virginia defensive back Drayshawn Miller is transferred to Auburn. And this is, West Virginia, of course, I don't watch a lot of West Virginia football here, but, for what it's worth, they were ranked number 1 in the country in pass defense. They've had a couple of guys transfer off that unit, and hell, they had their position coach leave as well. So that's called foreshadowing there, folks. But Drayshawn Miller, he's going to have an opportunity immediately here at Auburn to play for Derek Mason and fill a role within this Auburn secondary. And a guy like that, he's not coming to the SEC. He's not coming to Auburn to sit. So I think Drayshawn Miller's going to start, at least if not immediately, by the season's end there. So look for him to make a real impact going from the Big East to the SEC. Drayshawn Miller's got to make this list. Next on the list, number 13, former Tennessee offensive lineman Jameer Johnson to Texas A&M. Now, Jameer Johnson, to my knowledge, did not play in Texas A&M spring game a couple weeks back, but you could tell from that game they need help on that offensive line, and that's why you bring in a graduate transfer. And Jameer Johnson, I think Tennessee fans, that's not one that they were too overly concerned left the program, but he's got several years of experience and just playing on the field, in and out of the rotation. And Tennessee brought in guys like Wanya Morris and Darnell Wright, a couple of 5-star offensive tackle prospects, and the coaching staff clearly probably wanted to start those guys over Jameer Johnson, yet it seemed like about half the time it was Jameer Johnson. I mean, he was one of those guys that refused to be kept off the field. And, a little undersized. He's not the ideal measurables or anything like that, but Texas A&M losing 4 of 5 on the offensive line. Need some help there. I think Jameer Johnson is going to play quite a bit. So that's why I've got him number 13 on this list. Number 12, former Rice linebacker Blaise Aldridge to Mizzou. What a name there, Blaise Aldridge. This is someone that I was fired up as soon as it was announced he was headed to Mizzou. This is a guy that was a 2-time all-conference player at Rice. They play in the conference USA, Conference America. But he had over 200 tackles, 29 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 2 interceptions. And this is in 3 years, I'm saying. 200 tackles and 214 tackles in 3 seasons on the field. So obviously it's going to be a step up in competition there playing in the SEC for old Blaise. But hey, he's going to blaze a trail here for Missouri, man, because they need help at linebacker with Nick Bolton off in the NFL. He's going to be making tackles in the NFL this fall. So I think Blaise is going to step in and be a really big contributor for Mizzou. And speaking of Mizzou, right there, I go number 11 as well. Former Ohio State receiver Mookie Cooper. Got him number 11 on this list. And certainly you could say Mookie Cooper maybe deserves to be moved up this list a little bit. But, after having our guy Nate Edwards on the show, he kind of hit on an interesting point where Mookie he's probably the best receiver on Missouri's team right now. He kind of fits a similar mold of a lot of what they already have. So going into his first year under Eli Drinkowitz, maybe if he was in year 2, I'd put him a lot higher on this list. I think Mookie Cooper, hell, if you're on this list, you're doing good. So I'm not trying to disparage him at all, but that's why I've just got him right outside the top 10. So we'll see what kind of impact he has for the Missouri Tigers, but I think he's going to be all over the field for him. All right, number 10 on my list. I'd probably have this guy a lot higher if I was convinced he was going to be the starting quarterback, but I'm not at this point, and I kind of was before, but former Virginia Tech quarterback Hendon Hooker, now at Tennessee. And, based on what I've seen of all the Tennessee quarterbacks, I still like Hendon Hooker. I know Harrison Bailey had the great spring game. I always got to be careful not to put too much stock into what you see in a spring game. But I thought the biggest indictment of Hendon Hooker, and it's got nothing to do with him necessarily, but the coaching staff went out and got Joe Milton. So what does that tell you about what they think of Hendon Hooker, and not only Hooker, but the rest of the quarterbacks on the staff? I mean, you do not add a quarterback if you're already at 4 scholarship signal callers. Now Tennessee's at 5. Of course, that's probably not going to hold the entire offseason, but that's shaking my confidence a little bit, because Hendon Hooker is the only quarterback on this list, and I think he'll make a much bigger impact. This is going to look like a terrible number 10 selection if Hendon Hooker is the starting quarterback week 1 and holds that the entire season. But I just don't have confidence right now in him to do it, given the fact that Tennessee has also added Joe Milton. Kind of talking out both sides of my mouth here, but Harrison Bailey he looked great in that spring game. So don't put too much stock into it, but you can't completely dismiss it either. So maybe Harrison Bailey, maybe it's starting to click for him in this offense. So again, that's why I've got Hendon Hooker, quarterback, number 10 on this list. All right, number 9, impact transfer into the SEC. St. Francis receiver / tight end E.J. Jenkins, of course, now at South Carolina. And my God, you watch his spring game, I thought he looked like Jimmy Graham out there. I mean, that's who he reminded me of with that stature, being a red zone weapon for the Gamecocks. 6'7", 6'8". I've seen him listed as both, but that's legitimate. So South Carolina hurting for weapons. And E.J. Jenkins is not just a big guy. I mean, he's got big play ability. So Nick Muse, we know, is already coming back, and he and Luke Doty have already, established a really great rapport. And that, I think, is just going to help E.J. Jenkins to where, it's hard for me to believe all the coverage is going to be focused on E.J. Jenkins when we got Nick Muse at the other tight end spot. So that's potentially going to open some really good one-on-ones for Jenkins here, and that's why I got him in the top 10. All right, number 8 on my list, former Ohio State receiver Jamison Williams, now at Alabama. When Nick Saban says he needs speed at the receiver position, they go out and get a track type runner here, a guy that scored in the college football playoff that maybe just was not going to fit into the rotation as he wanted here at Ohio State this upcoming season. All those pieces together, you got to feel like Jamison Williams, he probably deserves to be boosted up this list if we're just talking about total potential and overall skill. But again, this is a impact ranking. So I think he's going to have a certain role in the Alabama offense. He'll be, the deep threat, the speed receiver type that they didn't have before. I think he's going to make some big-time plays for Alabama this year. All right, number 7 on my list, former Temple running back Ramon Davis, now at Vanderbilt with the law firm Henry Brooks in the transfer portal. I have no idea if he's ever coming back, but I'm surprised he's not made a decision yet. He was so good last season as a freshman for Vanderbilt, but now they need someone to step up. And all spring I was hearing about Davis. And in the spring game, Davis was standing out there too. So I think Davis is going to be a guy that's really, really under the radar. If this was fantasy football talk, I'd be buying stock in Ramon Davis because I think he's going to, he'll lead the team in carries and rushing yards and all that in his first year playing for Clark Lee. Buy you some Ramon Davis stock while you can. All right, number 6 on the list here. Clemson linebacker Mike Jones for the LSU. And this guy with starting experience at Clemson. LSU's bringing back damn near everybody on the entire starting defense and offense. The only position that they're losing some guys is linebacker. So Mike Jones is coming in here to start immediately. And if he could start for Clemson's defense, he could sure as hell start for LSU. I mean, they're on equal footing here, basically. So I think Mike Jones Jr. is going to be a name to know in the SEC. Almost like Jabril Cox, who they had just kind of come in here and was seamless. Day one starter, making plays. I know LSU's defense was dreadful at times last year, but Cox did well enough to get drafted. What was it, in round 4, I think it was. So, I think Mike Jones could have a similar impact. I'm putting him pretty high at number 6 on this list. All right, the top 5. Number 5, former Clemson running back DeMarcus Bowman of Florida. The former 5-star running back from Lakeland High School down there at the old stomping grounds of the Gators. This is one where Dan Mullen was crushed to miss him during his high school recruitment. But hell, it only lasted one season at Clemson. Now he's back in the state of Florida, going to carry the rock for the Florida Gators. I think he's only had like 9 carries for 30-something yards. So maybe if we'd seen a little bit more of him, I'd put him high on this list. But with Florida is only returning 68% of their rushing yards. That's the 9th fewest in the SEC. So someone like Bowman to step into this lineup, help Emory Jones not have to shoulder the entire load on the offensive side of the ball. I think Bowman is a name that maybe a lot of people in the SEC don't know is coming just yet. But I think they're going to find out real quick what Florida's got in the former Clemson running back. All right, number 4 on the list, former Texas linebacker Juwan Mitchell. Of course, led the Longhorns in tackles last season. Now he's coming over to Tennessee. I don't even know if they got any linebackers. I kid, but hey, Juwan Mitchell is, everything I've read about the guy, sounds like he's coming to Tennessee not only to start, but to be one of the team leaders. And that's pretty impressive for a guy that just transferred in about a week ago, and now he's talking about being a leader on the football team. I think that gives you an indication of what Tennessee's getting in Juwan Mitchell. And I think he's going to be a day one instant starter. Led Texas in tackles. He's going to lead Tennessee in tackles. When you lead a team in tackles your first season, you got to be put in the top 5 rankings of a list like this. All right, number 3 on the list, former Tennessee linebacker Henry Toato at Alabama. So I already touched on Henry Toato's addition, but I'd probably put him number 1 if we were talking the best transfer players. But again, that's not exactly what I'm talking about here. I'm talking impact of their transfers. And Henry Toato, I think he'll be outstanding for Alabama, but it'll be a rotation there, I think, at least in part. And it's because of Moody. It's because of Christian Harris. Because of all these outstanding linebackers that we already got at Alabama. This is almost ridiculous, me sitting here talking about it. Adding a potential All-American, likely high-round draft pick, just off the street, essentially. That's where Alabama's at these days. They're already talking up the defense back down there in Tuscaloosa. Now they've added another outstanding piece of the puzzle here. So Henry T is just going to make his defense that much more dominant. But I don't necessarily think he's going to be, the star of star on that defense because, hell, they got so many. So he'll make a big impact. But number 3 is where I got him right now. All right, top 2 here. Number 2, former Nebraska receiver Wandel Robinson to Kentucky. The Wildcats returning 89% of their receiving production from last season. But of course, we know the offense is being completely changed there in Lexington. They're going to air it out more. They're going to open this thing up. But it's not going to work if all you got is Josh Ali to throw the ball to. So Wandel Robinson fits this slot role. He's going to be asked to be all over the field, pre-motion snap, may even, get a ton of carries on jet sweeps and things like that. Maybe I could see him being a big factor in bubble screens and slants and things of that nature. So Wandel Robinson, he's going to be all over the field. I think it was Barrett Sallee said Wandel Robinson getting some Heisman love. I'd go that far. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be the number 2 receiver in the SEC, but in terms of impact for the Kentucky Wildcats in this new offense, I think it's almost safe to say, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to put this much hype under one player, but I would be far more worried about the transition to this new offense without Wandel Robinson, because even with him, I'm kind of questioning if they've got the pieces on the outside to run this thing, but without him, I mean, they'd be hopeless. So, I mean, he is going to be touching the ball all the time, and he may lead the SEC in all-purpose yards by the time the season ends. All right, number 1 on the list, former West Virginia defensive back Tyke Smith, of course, to Georgia. Pencil him in as your starting star already. He's going to be an integral part of Kirby Smart's defense right out the gate here. And I think the All-American from West Virginia, I mean, what a blow this is. Everybody's talking about Henry T. See, it's almost it's a different situation here because Tyke Smith, he's going to somewhere with Georgia where they desperately need. Remember, they were trying out linebackers at the nickel star position here. Don't have to do that necessarily now. Now we've got Tyke Smith, who was an All-American at West Virginia, can slide into that role at Georgia. This is, I think, going to be proven to be the addition of the offseason here because it's an elite player filling a position of need, desperate need with the Georgia Bulldogs, and it's just going to make that defense that much stronger in Athens this offseason. All right, guys, so I hope you like that. We got a guest lined up for the next episode, so we're going to have another episode on Wednesday morning that I think you guys will really enjoy, bringing on someone who's going to bring a fresh and unique perspective. You're not going to get the information he provides anywhere else. So that's a teaser there for you, and hopefully Cousin Shane can get off a couch and maybe we'll get his thoughts on Henry Toato and he can rip apart my lisp here next time I see him. But hey, that's going to do it. I appreciate each and every one of you hopping on and listening to me spiel here. If you made it this far, don't forget, give us that 5-star written review on the Apple Podcasts app and give us a subscribe to our YouTube channel. Trying to get that thing built up in time for the season. So each and every one of you that subscribe to that channel really helps that grow as well. So, hey, that's going to do it. Catch you on the next one.